Vulnerability feels risky, but without it, there is no connection, no growth, no trust. We've been taught to hide our fears, but what if showing them is the most courageous thing we can do? The strongest bonds are not built in moments of confidence, but in moments of openness. When most people hear the word vulnerability, they immediately think of fragility, exposure, or being at risk of harm. The image that comes to mind is someone standing defenseless, open to attack, or showing emotions that could be judged as weakness. For generations, society has trained us to hide our emotions, to mask our fears, to put on a brave face and carry the weight of our struggles without ever letting others see the cracks. We are told to be strong, to keep it together, to never let them see you sweat. The assumption is that strength comes from concealment, from pretending we are invincible, but the truth is the exact opposite. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the most profound expression of courage a human being can ever demonstrate. To be vulnerable is to allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, without armor, without filters, without the carefully crafted masks we wear to protect our image. And that act, though terrifying, is one of the bravest things we can do. Think about it. Anyone can hide behind a facade of perfection. Anyone can put on a show and pretend to have it all figured out. That requires no bravery at all. The real strength lies in showing up as you are, flaws and all, and being willing to let the world see your humanity. Vulnerability is the courage to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you have fears, that you've made mistakes, and yet you still step forward anyway. When someone tells you about their struggles, when they open up about their failures, or when they share a personal truth that they could have easily hidden, you don't think of them as weak. You think of them as strong. You respect them more. Why? Because deep down we know how difficult it is to expose the parts of ourselves that might invite judgment. It's easy to share our victories, but it takes immense courage to share our struggles. That is why vulnerability commands respect, not pity. We confuse vulnerability with weakness because of the way we've been conditioned to see strength. Strength has been defined as dominance, control, certainty, and confidence at all costs. But that definition is shallow. True strength is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to step forward in spite of fear. Vulnerability is that exact expression. It is standing on a stage and admitting your insecurities. It is sitting with someone you care about and saying, "I don't know how this will turn out, but I want to try." It is raising your hand at work and confessing, "I don't understand this part. Can you help me?" These are not acts of weakness. They are acts of profound bravery. If you want evidence, look at the people who inspire us most. They are rarely the ones who pretend to be perfect. They are the ones who dare to be real. Consider a leader who admits their mistake in front of their team. That leader earns more trust than the one who pretends they never make mistakes. Consider a parent who sits with their child and says, "I don't always know the answers, but I promise I'll be here with you." That parent builds more connection than the one who acts like they're never wrong. Consider an artist who pours their pain into their work, who reveals their heartbreak through their music or writing. That honesty is what draws us in, because it reflects our own hidden truths. Vulnerability creates resonance, and resonance is power. What makes vulnerability powerful is that it cannot be faked. You cannot pretend to be vulnerable and hope to gain the same respect. People are far more perceptive than we give them credit for. They can feel when someone is being authentic, and they can feel when someone is putting on a performance. Vulnerability is about honesty. It is about authenticity. It is about showing up without knowing whether you'll be accepted or rejected, and still choosing to show up. That is why it is courage in its purest form. Think about relationships, the foundation of every meaningful relationship. whether personal or professional, is trust, and trust is not built by sharing only the best parts of yourself. Trust is built by showing the whole picture. When you share your struggles with a friend, you allow them to step in and support you. When you admit your fears to a partner, you invite intimacy and closeness. When you confess your limitations to a colleague, you open the door for collaboration. Vulnerability is the seed from which trust grows. Without it, connections remain shallow. With it, they deepen into something lasting and real. This doesn't mean vulnerability is easy. In fact, it is incredibly difficult because it comes with risk. When you open yourself up, you risk being judged, rejected, misunderstood, or even hurt. That's why so many people avoid it. But here is the paradox, the very thing we fear, that showing our vulnerability will push people away is actually the thing that draws people closer. The risk of being misunderstood is outweighed by the potential of being fully seen and fully accepted. Vulnerability is the gateway to the kind of connection that every human being longs for, and the courage to step into that gateway is the opposite of weakness. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and choosing to act anyway. Vulnerability is exactly that. It is saying, I don't know if this will work, but I'm willing to try. It is saying, I'm not perfect, but here's the truth. It is saying, I need help, when everything in your body tells you to stay silent. And if you've ever tried to do any of these things, you know firsthand how much strength it requires. The irony is that when we embrace vulnerability, we don't become weaker. We become stronger. Because in vulnerability, we find freedom. The freedom to stop pretending, the freedom to drop the mask, the freedom to simply be human, and in that freedom, others see us more clearly. They relate to us, they trust us, they stand with us. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of strength, connection, and authenticity. It is the bridge between isolation and belonging, between fear and courage, between pretending and truly living. Human beings are wired for connection. From the moment we are born, we seek to belong, to be understood, to be accepted for who we are. Yet so much of modern life pushes us to project an image instead of revealing our true selves. We curate highlight reels, we polish our words, we present the version of ourselves that looks most impressive to others. But the paradox is that the very thing we try to hide, our doubts, our insecurities, our struggles, are the very things that make real connection possible. Openness is the foundation of human connection, and vulnerability is its language. Think about the conversations you remember most in your life. They are not the polite exchanges filled with small talk. They are the moments when someone dropped their guard and let you see who they truly were. They are the nights when a friend whispered their heartbreak, the quiet moments when someone trusted you with their fears, or the times when you admitted something you'd been hiding and were met not with judgment but with understanding. Those moments stay with us because they are real. They remind us that beneath the layers of appearances and roles, we are human beings who share the same longings, fears, and imperfections. When we choose openness, we invite others into our world. We create space for empathy. Imagine sitting across from someone who only tells you about their achievements, their victories, their flawless track record. You might admire them, but admiration does not equal connection. Admiration often creates distance. You see them as above you, someone to look at but not someone to stand beside. Now imagine that same person looking you in the eye and admitting, I struggle with this too, I'm not always confident, sometimes I fail. Instantly the walls come down. You don't just admire them, you relate to them. Openness turns respect into trust and trust into genuine connection. It is in our struggles, not our perfections, that we find common ground. Think of the last time you shared a personal difficulty with someone and they responded, me too. That small phrase is powerful because it bridges the gap between two lives. It tells us we are not alone. It transforms isolation into solidarity. We often spend so much energy trying to appear strong that we forget strength is not what others want most from us. What they want is honesty. They want to know they are not the only ones carrying invisible burdens. Leaders, in particular, often resist openness because they fear it will undermine their authority. They worry that admitting uncertainty or asking for help will erode respect. But the opposite is true. When a leader is willing to be open, to share not just their vision but also their vulnerabilities, their team feels trusted. And when people feel trusted, they reciprocate with loyalty and commitment. A leader who pretends to have all the answers creates followers. A leader who admits they don't know everything and invites others into the process creates a community. That is the difference between compliance and connection. In personal relationships, openness is equally essential. Many relationships falter not because of a lack of love, but because of a lack of honesty. We hide our true feelings to avoid conflict. We downplay our needs out of fear of being a burden, or we pretend to be fine when we're not. Over time, those unspoken truths create distance. The connection weakens because what holds it together is no longer authenticity but performance. But when we are willing to open up, even when it feels uncomfortable, we allow the relationship to breathe. Saying, "I'm scared," "I need you," or "I was hurt," may feel risky, but those admissions create the intimacy that love requires to thrive. What makes openness so powerful is that it works both ways. When we are open with others, we give them permission to be open with us. It's like a mirror effect. Your vulnerability signals safety, and that safety invites reciprocity. In workplaces, this can transform culture. A single person's openness about stress, burnout, or uncertainty can spark conversations that others were afraid to start. Suddenly, a group that once felt isolated in their private struggles realizes they are all carrying similar weights. That collective recognition is the seed of trust and belonging. Openness also dismantles judgment. It's easy to judge someone when we only see the surface of their life. But when we hear their story, when they share what they've gone through, judgment softens into compassion. That's why storytelling is so powerful. It is an act of openness that bridges divides and reminds us of our shared humanity. We may not have lived the same experiences, but when someone is willing to reveal their truth, we can see the echoes of our own experiences in theirs. At its core, connection through openness is about the courage to let people see behind the curtain. It is saying, here is who I am, not the polished version, not the curated image, but the real me. And it is in those moments that we discover we are not as different as we thought. We all want to belong. We all want to be understood. And we all want to know that we are enough even with our imperfections. Openness is the invitation that makes that possible. For a long time, leadership has been painted as a picture of certainty, control, and authority. The traditional image of a leader is someone who always knows what to do, someone who carries themselves with absolute confidence, someone who never falters, never hesitates, and never admits doubt. This image has been glorified in boardrooms, classrooms, and even families. But that image is flawed, and more importantly, it is unsustainable. Leaders who cling to the illusion of perfection may gain compliance, but they rarely gain trust. True leadership is not about projecting invincibility. It is about showing humanity. And the gateway to that humanity is vulnerability. When a leader admits they don't have all the answers, it does not weaken their authority. It strengthens their credibility. People do not follow leaders because they expect perfection. They follow leaders because they can trust them, and trust is built when there is honesty. Imagine being part of a team where the leader pretends to know everything. Every decision is presented as certain, every action as flawless, every challenge as easily surmountable. At first, it might look impressive, but soon the cracks appear when the leader inevitably makes mistakes. as every human being does. Their unwillingness to acknowledge them erodes confidence. People begin to wonder what else is being hidden, what other truths are being glossed over. The facade of strength becomes a barrier to genuine connection. Now picture a different kind of leader, one who stands in front of their team and says, "I don't have all the answers, but I believe we can figure this out together." That simple admission changes everything. Suddenly, the responsibility is not a burden carried by one person, but a shared mission carried by many. The team feels trusted because their voices matter. The leader is not above them, but with them. Vulnerability shifts leadership from command and control to trust and collaboration. There is immense power in a leader who can say, "I was wrong." Those three words, though difficult, are transformative. They show accountability. They tell the team that honesty is valued more than ego. And when a leader models accountability, it creates a culture where others feel safe to admit their mistakes too. Instead of wasting energy covering up errors, people can focus on learning from them. Vulnerability, in this way, becomes the foundation of growth. Without it, organizations stagnate under the weight of hidden failures. With it, they evolve, adapt, and innovate. Leadership with vulnerability also builds resilience. In times of crisis, people look to leaders for direction. A leader who pretends everything is fine when it is not made temporarily calm fears, but eventually reality catches up. When leaders are open about the challenges they face, when they admit uncertainty but show commitment to facing it together, they foster resilience not by denying fear, but by facing it honestly. People are far more capable of enduring hardship when they feel they are part of the journey, when they are trusted with the truth instead of shielded with half-truths. Consider the leaders in history or in business who are most revered. They are not remembered because they pretended to be perfect. They are remembered because they stood with courage in the face of the unknown, because they admitted fear but kept moving forward, because they shared their vision honestly, flaws and all. Vulnerability made them relatable, and relatability made them trustworthy. Leadership is not about standing above others, it is about standing with them. And no one can truly stand with others unless they are willing to reveal their own humanity. In families, leadership with vulnerability looks like a parent admitting to their child, "I don't always get it right, but I'm trying." That honesty creates a bond far stronger than the illusion of a perfect parent who never falters. In education, it looks like a teacher telling their students, "I don't have every answer, but I'm excited to explore this with you." That vulnerability makes learning a shared experience rather than a one-way lecture. In workplaces, it looks like a manager saying, "This project is challenging, and I need your ideas to make it work." That invitation transforms employees into collaborators, turning obligation into ownership. The irony is that many leaders resist vulnerability because they fear it will make them appear weak. But weakness is not admitting you don't know something. Weakness is pretending you do and being exposed later. Weakness is hiding mistakes instead of addressing them. Weakness is choosing pride over progress. Vulnerability is the opposite. It is the willingness to take off the mask of invincibility and step into authenticity. And authenticity breeds respect, even when it includes imperfection. What makes leadership with vulnerability so powerful is that it creates a ripple effect. When the person in the highest position dares to be real, it signals to everyone else that they can be real too. It sets a tone. It creates psychological safety. Teams that feel safe innovate more because they are not afraid of failure. They communicate more because they are not afraid of judgment. They collaborate more because they trust that their voices will be heard. All of this begins with a leader's choice to embrace vulnerability, At its core, leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in your charge. And you cannot take care of people if you are unwilling to show them who you truly are. Vulnerability is the bridge that turns authority into trust, vision into collaboration, and responsibility into shared ownership. Leadership with vulnerability is not about abandoning strength. It is about redefining it. True strength is not pretending to have no fears. True strength is showing up with your fears and still choosing to lead. Human beings have an instinctive tendency to avoid discomfort. We are wired to seek safety, predictability, and stability. Our brains are designed to steer us away from risk because risk has historically meant danger. But in the modern world, growth rarely comes from staying within the boundaries of what feels safe. Growth lives in the territory of discomfort, and vulnerability is the pathway that leads us there. To be vulnerable is to step into situations where the outcome is uncertain, where we cannot control the response, where we risk rejection, judgment, or failure. Yet those very moments of discomfort are the ones that shape us, strengthen us, and expand who we are. Think about the first time you tried something new, whether it was speaking in front of an audience, asking for help, or confessing your feelings to someone you cared about. Your heart probably raced, your palms sweated, your voice may have shaken. Everything in you wanted to retreat back to safety. But by moving forward anyway, you discovered something new about yourself. Maybe it was courage you didn't know you had. Maybe it was the realization that even if you stumbled, you could recover. That moment of discomfort became a moment of growth. Vulnerability forces us to confront the edge of our comfort zones, and it is at that edge that transformation happens. Comfort zones are deceptive. They feel safe, but in reality, they are stagnant. If we only ever stay where we feel comfortable, we remain the same. We repeat the same patterns, have the same conversations, and live the same experiences. There is no challenge, no friction, no opportunity to become something more. Discomfort, on the other hand, is a signal that we are stretching, that we are moving into new territory. Vulnerability is the act of saying, I am willing to be uncomfortable, because what lies on the other side matters more than my fear. In professional life, growth from discomfort is often the difference between stagnation and innovation. The most groundbreaking ideas rarely come from environments where everything feels certain and predictable. They come from people who are willing to risk being wrong, to suggest an idea that might be rejected, to step into projects they've never done before. Vulnerability fuels this process because innovation is inherently uncertain. When a team dares to ask questions that don't have easy answers, when individuals dare to propose ideas that could fail, they open the door to discovery. Every new product, every breakthrough, every creative leap exists because someone chose discomfort over safety. On a personal level, vulnerability is what allows us to grow in our relationships. Opening up about how we feel, admitting when we are hurt, or expressing needs that might be misunderstood all carry the risk of discomfort. But they are also the moments that deepen intimacy. A relationship where both people only share what feels safe will never move beyond the surface. It is through uncomfortable conversations, those moments when voices shake, when emotions spill out, that real closeness is formed. Vulnerability demands discomfort, but it rewards us with growth in the form of stronger bonds, clearer understanding, and genuine connection. Discomfort also teaches resilience. Every time we step into a vulnerable situation and survive, we build proof that we can handle more than we thought. A failed attempt becomes a lesson, a rejection becomes redirection, a mistake becomes wisdom. Over time, the muscle of resilience strengthens, and what once felt terrifying becomes manageable. Public speaking is a classic example. The first time you stand in front of an audience, discomfort feels overwhelming. But each attempt teaches you something. How to steady your breathing, how to recover from a mistake, how to keep going despite nerves. Eventually, the discomfort lessens, not because it disappears, but because you've grown stronger through it. Vulnerability transforms discomfort into a training ground for resilience. It's important to recognize that vulnerability does not guarantee a positive outcome. That's what makes it uncomfortable in the first place. You can share your idea and have it rejected. You can open your heart and not have it reciprocated. You can take a risk and watch it fail. But every time you face that discomfort, you grow. You grow in courage, in wisdom, in adaptability. You grow in your ability to separate your worth from the outcome. You learn that failure is not final, that rejection does not define you, that discomfort is not destruction but transformation. Think about some of the most defining moments in your life. Chances are they were not the easy ones. They were the moments when you stepped into the unknown, when you risked embarrassment, when you took a chance without knowing how it would end. Maybe it was moving to a new city, starting a business, confessing love, or standing up for what you believed in. In those moments you were vulnerable and you were deeply uncomfortable. But those are the very moments that shaped you, that forced you to grow into the person you are now. Growth never comes from standing still. It comes from walking into discomfort with open eyes and an open heart. The power of vulnerability is that it reframes discomfort as opportunity. Instead of something to be avoided, discomfort becomes a signpost that we are moving in the right direction. Vulnerability does not remove the fear. It teaches us to carry the fear with us while we act anyway. And in doing so, it transforms discomfort from something that holds us back into something that pulls us forward. It shows us that the most important parts of life, love, innovation, trust, resilience, are all born not in the comfort zone but beyond it. When we think of inspiration, we often imagine grand gestures, speeches that move crowds, or extraordinary acts of bravery. But inspiration is rarely born out of perfection. It does not come from someone who never falters, never doubts, never fails. Inspiration comes from people who dare to be real. It comes from those who allow their vulnerability to be seen, and in doing so, give others permission to embrace their own. Vulnerability has a contagious quality. When one person opens up, it creates a ripple effect that spreads outward, touching those who witness it and encouraging them to step into their own authenticity. The simple act of saying, "I don't have it all figured out," can be more inspiring than any polished performance of confidence. Because people do not relate to perfection, they relate to humanity. When someone reveals their struggles, their insecurities, or their failures, it resonates. We see ourselves in their stories. We feel less alone in our own imperfections. Inspiration does not come from standing above others. It comes from standing beside them, showing them that it is possible to move forward even when you are afraid, even when you are uncertain, even when you are flawed. Consider a leader who chooses vulnerability. Instead of pretending to have every answer, they admit when they need help. Instead of hiding mistakes, they acknowledge them openly. Their example sends a message to their team. It is safe to be honest here. It is safe to admit when you are struggling. It is safe to take risks without fear of humiliation. That leader does not just inspire action, they inspire trust. And trust, once established, multiplies into commitment, creativity, and collaboration. One person's willingness to be vulnerable can shift an entire culture from one of fear to one of possibility. Inspiration through vulnerability is not limited to leadership roles. It happens in everyday life, often in the quietest of moments. Think about the times when a friend shared their struggles with you. That honesty did not make you respect them less. It made you admire them more. Their courage to reveal what they could have hidden gave you the courage to share something of your own. Inspiration often happens in these small exchanges, in the shared acknowledgement that life is not always easy, and yet we move forward together. Artists, writers, and creators throughout history have understood this truth. The works that endure are not the ones that mask pain or hide imperfection. They are the ones that reveal it. A song that captures heartbreak, a painting that conveys grief, a story that exposes doubt. These creations inspire because they are vulnerable. They remind us of our shared humanity, that beneath the surface we all wrestle with the same emotions. The artist becomes a mirror, and through that mirror we find comfort, courage, and motivation to face our own struggles. Vulnerability becomes the thread that connects one heart to another across time and space. There is also a powerful paradox in vulnerability as inspiration. When we open up, we often fear that others will see us as weak, yet it is precisely our openness that others find strong. We may worry that admitting our fears will push people away, but more often it draws them closer. Vulnerability reveals authenticity, and authenticity is magnetic. People are inspired not by the image of someone who has everything under control, but by the example of someone who chooses to keep going despite uncertainty. That choice becomes a model for others. It tells them, if they can face their fears, so can I. In workplaces, in families, in communities, this effect compounds. One person's vulnerability gives others permission to step into theirs, and soon the environment changes. Instead of silence around struggles, there is dialogue. Instead of judgment around mistakes, there is learning. Instead of fear of failure, there is courage to try. Inspiration here is not about lifting people with words alone. It is about creating a space where people feel safe enough to be themselves, and that safety fuels action. People will work harder, love deeper, and dream bigger when they are inspired by the authenticity of those around them. We often underestimate how much our willingness to be vulnerable impacts the people watching us. Sometimes it is not the speech we give, but the honesty we show in a private conversation that leaves the deepest mark. A child who sees a parent admit to a mistake learns that it is okay not to be perfect. A student who sees a teacher confess uncertainty learns that curiosity matters more than appearances. A colleague who sees another admit burnout feels less ashamed of their own struggles. Each of these moments plants seeds of inspiration. The courage of one person becomes the courage of many. Vulnerability also transforms how we view resilience. When someone shares not just their success, but the obstacles they faced along the way, the story becomes real. We do not just see the outcome, we see the journey. That journey inspires because it mirrors our own. Success without struggle feels unattainable. Success with struggle feels possible. Vulnerability in storytelling reminds us that the path to achievement is never straight, never perfect, and never without pain. And knowing that others endured makes it easier for us to endure as well. At its essence, inspiration through vulnerability is about breaking the illusion that we must be flawless to matter. It shows us that our imperfections are not barriers to connection, but bridges. It demonstrates that strength is not about hiding our struggles, but about moving forward while carrying them. And when one person dares to show up as they truly are, it sparks something powerful in everyone who witnesses it. Their example whispers the truth we all need to hear. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it, and that by doing so, we do not just change ourselves. We inspire others to do the same. Vulnerability is not the soft underbelly of human weakness. It is the core of our greatest strength. It teaches us that authenticity carries more power than perfection, that openness builds deeper connections than polished facades, and that true leadership thrives not in certainty but in honesty. It reminds us that discomfort is not something to fear but something to embrace, because it is through discomfort that we grow, evolve, and discover what we are truly capable of. And above all, Vulnerability is a gift we give not only to ourselves, but to those around us. When we dare to be seen as we are, we light the way for others to do the same. It is in that shared courage, that collective honesty, and that willingness to stand unguarded that we find trust, growth, inspiration, and the very essence of being human.